We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract allegiances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That is the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence adopted in Philadelphia on July 4th, 1776. As you may know, the Declaration of Independence was principally authored and came out of the brilliant mind of Thomas Jefferson, who as president started the Library of Congress from his own personal library. He collected books. He was a bibliophile. But in his apartment in Philadelphia during that summer, he didn't have his library from Monticello. He didn't have his library from that he had assembled in Paris. Okay. What did he have? He had everything up here. The committee to draft the Declaration of Independence was made up of Dr. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams from Massachusetts, Franklin from Pennsylvania, Roger Sherman from Connecticut. They don't say it that way. We don't say it that way. Connecticut, and Livingston from Old New York. Okay, but it was thought that Jefferson had the most brilliant pen, and he was given the job of drafting the Declaration. What I just read to you is the final paragraph of that document. It is, in fact, a declaration of war. It is the Declaration of Independence. That's the last paragraph. However, as you can see from the first document in the appendix of your book, and what I'm holding up here is a 4-page document, okay, with 4 parts to it. So why do we need all the verbiage? Why do we need all the words? Okay. It's been said that the Declaration of Independence is our birth certificate, the birth certificate of the United States of America. Absolutely true. Okay. It is also said that it is a document for the ages. And in this part of this lecture, I will talk about that. There will be another mini lecture coming up right after this, and that will break down the document itself. It's basically broken down into 4 parts. The last part of which, as I said, is the actual Declaration of Independence, and we'll talk about why go through 3.5 pages before you actually get to the Declaration. Let me talk about our birth certificate, and at the same time it being a document for the ages. If you remember back, there was a very short speech delivered by President Abraham Lincoln in the fall after the bloodiest summer that we probably ever experienced in our nation's history. The summer of 1863, with the battles of Gettysburg and the battles of Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, the draft riots in New York City, but in the fall of 1863, Abraham Lincoln goes to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, to commemorate and to initiate the Gettysburg National Cemetery. It was decided that there was so many bodies, so many casualties from that 3-day battle, that decisive 3-day battle in the Civil War, that Lincoln made it into a national military cemetery, and he was going there to make some short remarks. He was not the principal speaker. There was the orator Edward Everett that spoke that day for about maybe 2.5 hours. Abraham Lincoln delivered a speech that was 240 words. Okay, it was over so quickly that the only photograph that was taken of Mr. Lincoln has him actually halfway sitting down. He's leaning forward and sitting back down. He had delivered his 240-word Gettysburg Address, and by the time the photographer had set up his camera and took the picture, the moment was almost totally missed. But what Abraham Lincoln said in that speech was to dedicate not only the cemetery, but rededicate the United States of America to the words of our founding. Okay, and he goes to Jefferson's words. He goes to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Direct quote from Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. Okay. In April of 1963, those words were once again delivered by another great patriot of our country, Dr. Martin Luther King. You'll recall that in his "I Have a Dream" speech, which was on paper a very good speech, okay, but it certainly left the page, and once the preacher, the Reverend Dr. King, got started, he was in his pulpit, standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, with the larger-than-life statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting behind him and looking over his shoulder. He, too, quotes Jefferson. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Okay? And then, as the preacher starts riffing and gaining his cadence, and ratcheting up to a crescendo, there's our founding document. There's our birth certificate, once again, being called forth to dedicate a moment in our history. Okay, I'm sure no one will ever forget the "I Have a Dream" speech. But there is our founding document. There are the words of the Declaration of Independence, and of the patriot Thomas Jefferson. I'm reminded that a few years into my high school teaching career, um, in June of 1989, much different time, and certainly not a prominent person. Um, but I was teaching my high school social studies classes during the time what is now known as the Tiananmen Square um, gatherings in Beijing, China, communist China. There was a democracy movement that began with the young people in China, and the the gathering of hundreds of thousands of young men and women, college students, and many others. Uh, for days, they gathered in Tiananmen Square, and they were petitioning the communist dictatorial government of China to basically loosen up and to recognize the individual rights of the Chinese people. Now, 1989, the media was not what it is today, but it certainly was incredibly advanced. We not only had network news programs and network news anchors from three major networks, but we also had the media from the world, and we also had cable news. The cable news network, for one, CNN. And the cameras were there. American media was there. International media was there. And the eyes of the world, as it were on Beijing, Tiananmen Square, and what would the government say to these students? Well, what were the students saying? We know what they were saying. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We didn't need translators. We didn't need translations. Because we could see that as big as life, the placards that the students were holding up were in English, and they were the words of our birth certificate, of our founding document, of our Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson's words, okay? We hold these truths to be self-evident. Freedom, democracy. I don't remember the sequence, but there's a number of iconic photographs and iconic pictures and video from those days, okay? When the eyes of the world was watching, and we could see into Beijing, into Tiananmen Square, before the media was shut out, and things went literally dark and figuratively dark. Okay, but before that, the art students gathered, and they started creating a statue, and it was a form of the Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Liberty, but it was a Statue of Liberty, and they wheeled this larger-than-life statue out, and another signal was sent to the Chinese government that these students were crying for freedom and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right. And then everything went dark. The media was told to go home. The army came in, and to this day, we have no idea what slaughter took place. They think that hundreds, but probably thousands Thousands of young people were slaughtered. Unarmed students were slaughtered by the Chinese army. Okay, but they were rallying, they were gathering, and they were petitioning their government for a redress of grievances and for their natural rights. And so if you, and one more point before I go. A document for the ages. There are many nations that use the Declaration of Independence as their philosophical basis for the founding of their nations and the fashioning of their governments into some form of democratic republican form of government, a representative form of government based upon the ideals, the philosophy, and almost the exact same words as Thomas Jefferson used in our original Declaration. So it wasn't just so that they could declare war. Thomas Jefferson knew exactly what he was doing in fashioning 3.5 pages of writing before he gets to actually declare war and declare independence from Great Britain. There's one more point. It should be noted that the Seneca Falls Conference convention that in the 1840s with Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and for that matter, Mr. Frederick Douglass, and many other, the suffragette movement, the women's rights movement, was founded on a declaration of the rights of women. And again, take a look at it. Look at the word. Look at the form of it. Look at the wording of it, and you'll see our founding document, our birth certificate, once again being used as a template for freedom, democracy, and a Declaration of Independence.